Oh, class, this particular module and discussion will be about selecting a speech topic, how to select your speech topic, and then we'll start a little bit about how to complete the topic form after selecting your speech topic. These lecture slides that I'll follow through to help you understand how to select your speech topic. You may have already selected your particular topic for your first speech, first major speech, is that's the informative speech. It's on a country, and so you should have. You may have already completed and selected your country at this particular point. So what I'll help you do is define what areas you're going to talk about in your country, how to refine that speech into getting a central idea statement. And there's a process that you go through in narrowing down the focus of your speech and getting it to a particular central idea statement with the three main key points that you're going to talk about in the speech. Remember, when you're speaking in front of an audience, an audience has a tendency, while you're speaking to them, they will remember key things about your speech. And so part of that is, and research has shown that if you tell people up front exactly what you're going to talk to them about, so you up front in your opening of your speech, there's a format and a process that you go through, which will be discussed in another video lecture discussion. But in the first part of your speech, you will tell them what you're going to talk to them about, and then you talk about those things throughout your speech, and then in your closing you tell them what you just told them earlier. You tell them your main points that you want them to remember, so that main takeaway. So part of what we're going to do here in selecting that speech topic and narrowing it down is basically refining exactly that one central idea statement, that one thesis statement that you want your audience to remember, if anything else from your speech, that takeaway that you want them to remember. It also can be considered, what we're trying to get you down to is what we call the elevator speech or the elevator pitch, is that within 30 seconds you can tell someone what your speech is about or what your particular issues are about that you're going to address. So if you're running across campus, for example, and you're about to get in the elevator and go up to the second floor of the Adams building, and you run into Prez, and Prez says, "Hey, why are you going so fast?" You say, "Hey, look, I'm heading to my speech class to give a speech." And so he asks, "Well, what your speech is about?" That 30 seconds that you have, or less than 30 seconds, to tell Prez what your speech is about, is what we're going to get to. That particular central idea statement that you say, "I'm going to talk, my speech is about this, and these are my three main points." Boom, 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 boom. So in just within 30 seconds, he knows exactly, or a person you're talking to will know exactly what your speech is about without having to go into the whole 4 or 5 minutes spiel of the whole speech. So that's what we're going to do here today. So selecting a speech topic, the objectives are to help you understand the methods of brainstorming. Of course, with the informative speech, you have a country that you select from, a list that's provided. But when you do your demonstration speech, you're going to have to brainstorm and come up with a topic of your own. When you do your persuasion speech, you're going to have to brainstorm and come up with a topic of your own as well. So this process you'll use throughout developing for your speeches. And of course, you can use this outside of the classroom and beyond the classroom after finishing the course, of methods to brainstorm and come up with a speech topic, and then come up with a general purpose of your speech, a specific purpose of your speech, and then a central idea statement of your speech. So once you narrow all that down into understanding and having a good speech for you. We'll talk about and refer back to the transactional communication model, because remember, as I mentioned in the first class, and I'll continue to mention throughout the class, is that we always want to make sure that we are doing what we call effective communication. Effective communication is that when you're speaking, you have to understand your audience, the receiver. So if you're the sender, you're the communicator. If you're the receiver, you're also a communicator in a form of a way. So understanding both perspectives, understanding the worldview, the frame of reference of your audience, meaning all the sum total of their experiences and ideas and everything that they have learned and culture and background that they've brought up with, having an understanding of the frame of reference of your audience or your makeup, their worldview, so you can craft your speech in the right way so the messages will be received. Because when you're communicating and sending, you're sending those messages and you're hoping that it is received in the proper way on the other end. And you'll know that through feedback based on the audience's reaction, based on maybe if you're persuading them to change their attitude or behavior, or you're educating them. So part of that is determining how to send your messages, how to come up with your key main points of your speech, what in the content of your speech will affect your audience based on what you know about your audience. And so in this case, of course, it would be your fellow peers and students in class, and they come from a variety of backgrounds. But you want to make sure that when you're crafting your speech, you're thinking of them in mind, so you can get your information across the most effectively. Also, part of the transactional communication model is knowing what the medium, the channel is. So that's basically how you're delivering the communication. In this way, you're doing it orally through a speech, but it also could be through text messaging. It could be on the phone. It could be a video conference. What medium are you using? Is that the most effective medium? Will you have to do something different with the medium? Also, with speeches, you may have some visual fiction showed up. You may have a PowerPoint slide presentation. You may have a poster display. So those additional visual aids will also be part of how your message is getting across. The things that you have to deal with and be aware of are the barriers, noise, and interference. Those can be both physical, emotional. The barriers could be that if you are speaking, if it's only audio, like in this case here, you don't actually see the person speaking. That could be a barrier for some people. That could be some interference because there's no connection there from the visually seeing of a person. So you have to make sure that you have your information and you're clearly being able to explain your messages. Barriers could be physically actually noise. You could be in a room where the air conditioner system is a little too loud, the air coming out of the vent, so you need to speak louder. You need to make sure you enunciate better. Or if it's a huge room and you don't have a speaker system, you want to make sure that you project your voice so everyone can hear you, so there's no interference there. You want to also add in information that you know your audience may be interested in hearing, so you can continue to draw their attention throughout your speech, because part of that, the interference could be that they stop paying attention. They go off and start thinking about what they're going to eat for dinner instead of listening to your speech. So you need to make sure you are understanding all of these principles so you can have effective communication throughout your process. And the same thing with developing a speech. So here's a systematic process for speech preparation. You need to select the topic, determine the general purpose of your speech, narrow that topic to a specific purpose, and then develop a central idea that reflects the main points to be developed in the speech. Here for your informative speech, you will develop 3 main points out of your central idea. So there's 3 main points that you will cover in the body of your speech, and I'll explain that a little bit further. So let's first go into selecting a topic. So in this case, that you brainstorm and you think about ideas and concepts for the informative speech. It's going to be about a country. I've already told you that I want to make sure that you incorporate principles of how that country that you're selected from the list was involved, has a history of involvement. What is that relayed to in the North Atlantic slave trade? So how is that country connected in that process? Were they on the receiving end? Did they lose people from their country? How has that affected their culture or their history or the ethnic makeup of the people of that country? Part of it is that commonality of the North Atlantic slave trade. So I want that to be incorporated into based on the country that you select. Hopefully you were able to select a country that interests you. Maybe your grandparents are from that country. Maybe you are from that country. Maybe you visited the country before. Maybe you just want to visit that country, or you're just interested in that particular region. That could be, you always want to think about that when you're developing a speech idea. So for your demonstration and your persuasive speech later in the course, be thinking about what interests you. What do you have strong opinions or beliefs about? What is something, if it interests you, if it's something that you may have some commonality with, some experience, or what, that will drive you in your research and wanting to be more involved in it. So kind of make an inventory of your interests and skills and experiences. What do you like? Where do you want to go? What type of people have you visited? What places are you interested in? What have you heard about before? Some history. And that now you think you want to look into it some more. We got to look through some books. Go online. Google a few things. Look and see what's out there. Encyclopedias, Wikipedia. Read newspapers, magazines. Talk to friends. Talk to family members. Talk to your grandparents about the history. You'd be surprised about some of the history of the family that you didn't realize that you had some connections to. Like in my case, finding out later in life that I had family members from the Dominican Republic. And so those things will actually enhance who you are, but also may bring interest to you and make you want to do more research. So in this case, you've selected a topic. We do know that. So your topic is whatever the particular country that you've now put your name down to whether it's Cuba or Mexico, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Honduras, the Bahamas, whatever your country that you've selected, you've done that now. So you've selected a topic, determining your general purpose. I may have mentioned earlier, but in the course, there are two general purposes basically in speeches. You're either informing or you're persuading. Informing, you're pretty much acting as a teacher. You're communicating information clearly, accurately. You're making it interesting. You're trying to enhance the knowledge and understanding of the listeners, of your audience. So that's informing. Persuading is you're trying to change attitudes or behaviors or actions of your audience. You're trying to seek the listeners to believe something or do something based upon that. That's the outcome that you want to have as an attitude change or behavioral action change of your audience. So those are two general purposes of a speech. Either you're informing or you're persuading. For your informative speech, obviously, as the name of it, you will be informing us about a particular country, maybe the history, the culture, the language, the geography, the people, the food, the music, whatever those key points that you'll come up with a little bit later. And again, the demonstration speech is a form of informative speech. You're demonstrating how something works or how it's put together or how to do something. And then later you'll do a persuasive speech where you'll be giving a speech on persuading us to a particular point of view or persuading us to take action, some type of call to action on a particular issue. So two general purposes. So for your informative speech, of course, you have selected your topic of your country, and then your general purpose of the informative speech that you're giving on your country is to inform. Next, you'll narrow down from a general purpose to a specific purpose. From that, now you're informing them, but what are you going to inform them about? So now you're trying to indicate precisely what the speaker wants the audience to know or believe about the speech, what you hope to accomplish in the speech. And you're going to put that into a full infinitive phrase, basically starting with the word to do something. I want to inform my audience about the way you should exercise every day. I want to inform my audience about the importance of exercising every day. So you're trying to limit it to one distinct idea. You want to not be too vague, but not too general, but just kind of an infinitive phrase. Okay, what is kind of the purpose that you are specific purpose that you want to get from this speech? So, of course, with the informative speech, you want to inform and educate your audience about a particular country. So that's pretty much a general, straightforward for infinitive phrases. So here's some examples of infinitive phrases. Here's one for informative speech. To inform my audience about the four major kinds of calendars used in the world today. That's a full infinitive phrase. That's a specific purpose of your speech. Another one for a persuasive speech, to persuade my audience that the federal government should increase funding for stem cell research. Another way to look at it, to inform my audience how yoga can improve their health. And then another example, to persuade my audience that the campus policy on student parking should be revised. And then finally for informative speech, and specifically one about informative speech about a country, to inform and educate my audience about the country of the Dominican Republic. So if we selected a topic, it's going to be about a country, in this case probably Dominican Republic. The general purpose is to inform. We narrowed it down to a specific purpose, which was to inform and educate my audience about the country of the Dominican Republic. And now we're going to get to that central idea that reflects the main points developed in the speech. So it gets to what we call the elevator speech. So with that, once you have a specific statement, you ask yourself these questions. Does my specific purpose meet the assignment? So your specific purpose, does it meet the assignment? Your assignment was for the informative speech is to inform and educate us about a particular country, kind of connected with how it's connected to the North American slave trade. Also, can this specific purpose be accomplished in the time allotted for the informative speech that you're given? Is the specific purpose relevant to the audience? Of course, it's relevant to the audience. It's not trivial. Can you do it without being too technical? You should be able to. Is the specific purpose limited to one distinct idea? Yes, that distinct idea is informing them and educating them about a particular country, your audience. So with that specific purpose, and you've crafted it down, now we're going to get to the central idea statement. The central idea statement is one single statement, one single sentence that encapsulates the main points of your speech, and it is pretty much sums up your speech in one sentence. What your speech is about is basically what you want your audience to remember when they've forgotten everything else you've told them. So if you have a 5-minute speech, you've talked to them for 5 minutes, what is that one statement about your speech, the main points that you want them to remember if they go away? So you've always heard of those things. No one can remember what the speaker at their graduation or commencement said. So part of what we're trying to do here is, if you can't remember everything they said, at least you can remember what the three main points were, what their main key points were. What was that one thing that stood out? And that's what we want your central idea statement to be. It should be expressed in a full, grammatically correct sentence. It should not be in the form of a question. You should avoid figurative language, not be too vague, not be too general, but be specific about the exactly what you're going to talk about and what are the three main points you're going to talk about. So, for an example, we just say the topic of our speech was about the America's prison system. We got to the general purpose was to inform. We did a specific purpose statement, which was a full infinitive statement starting with to inform my audience of the three major problems facing America's prison system. And then we get to the central idea, which is more specific, what those three major problems were and that takeaway. So the central idea of my speech will be America's prison system suffers from three major problems: overcrowding of inmates, lack of effective rehabilitation programs, and high expense to taxpayers. So that is your pitch. That is your 30-second pitch. This is that one central idea statement that if you were running across campus and someone stopped you and say, hey, look, where are you going? Where are you trying to, you heading to class? Yeah, I got to give a speech today. Or what's your speech about? That central idea statement, your thesis statement, this is what you would tell them. Hey, I got to give a speech today about the American prison system because it suffers from three major problems: overcrowding of inmates, lack of effective rehabilitation programs, and high expense to taxpayers. So if you gave a 5-minute speech, those are the three key points that you want your audience to walk away with and remember. Hey, he gave a good speech about the overcrowding of inmates, a lack of rehabilitation programs for those who are in prison, and the high expense to taxpayers of imprisoning people. So those are the three things he talked about. So that's what you want in your speech, that central idea statement. Here's another example using a country. So the Dominican Republic was the topic of the speech. The general purpose, we narrowed it down to inform, and then we narrowed to a specific purpose is to inform and educate my audience about the country called the Dominican Republic. And then the central idea, this thesis statement is the Dominican Republic is a beautiful Caribbean country with a fascinating history, lush tropical paradise, and a diverse culture. So those will be my three main points in my speech. And then in later videos, we'll discuss the opening and the closing of the speech and the body of your speech. The body of your speech will be where you would then elaborate on these three main points in your speech. So today we looked at how to select a topic, how to get to the general purpose, which either is to inform or to persuade, and then narrow the topic to a specific purpose. What is the purpose of your speech, which is in an infinitive, full infinitive phrase, starting with the to inform about this or to persuade about that. Then you develop your central idea, which is your thesis statement, basically, of your speech, which reflects the main points that you will later be speaking about in your speech. And so these were our objectives again. And so the next portion, and then get into the next video, which will talk more in detail of how to complete the topic form. You'll need to understand how to narrow your speech topic down, understand what is required of the topic form, and then also in another video, how to organize your speech that will better help and inform you of how to complete the topic form. Because you'll complete this topic form, this information, in this particular case, you will complete it online in Canvas, and it'll be you're writing up your central ideas thesis statement based upon what we just talked about. You'll list your three main points, which are basically should be in your thesis central idea statement already, but you'll just list them out. And then we'll talk about how to gain the audience attention, which are three different ways that we will do it in this class. How you're qualified to speak on the topic. This is about credibility. I'll talk about this in a separate video. And how will you tell your audience this is important or relevant to them? The why, how to motivate your audience to listen. And then, of course, you need to have three references or sources. So we'll talk about this in the next video. Thank you.